furries think that they're animals. Hi everyone, I'm Mocha, I'm an Australian furry. I primarily do art. I wanted to talk about, do furries think that they are an animal? So let's get into all things Therian, otherkin, and furry. Now, it is a persuasive myth on the internet that furries think that they are an animal. This is Mocha, my persona. Now, everyone thinks she's a bunny, and you are half right, she is. However, she is a bunny dog. Now, being my persona, she obviously represents me. But does that mean that I think that I'm a hybrid dog-rabbit? No, I don't. So let's talk first about what a furry is, definition of a furry, and personas. Number one, what is a furry? Furry is just a term used to describe anyone who is in the furry fandom, or more specifically as a definition, is someone who likes anthropomorphized characters. Anthropomorphized meaning animal characters that walk on two legs similar to humans. So say Zootopia, take Robin Hood, even things like The Lion King, where they're not walking on two legs, however they are very human-like. They have human facial features like eyebrows and expressions that animals obviously don't make. And then of course they have thoughts, feelings, conversations, relationships in the same way that a human does. So essentially a furry is just someone who likes characters who are anthropomorphized. So animal characters that have a very human-like quality. Now these can be found all across media. Think of pretty much any video game, any TV show, any movie. There is probably some variety of furry in it. Take Marvel, Rocket Raccoon could be described as a furry. Something special to me, if you look over here, Halo, you could technically describe things as elites and Jiralhanae as furries, particularly the brutes who are literally just anthropomorphized apes. They are furries. Planet of the Apes, most movies made by Disney in the 90s for some reason when they went through a weird furry phase. In fact, even now they still have little weird furry movies. But furries are just people who have an interest in these characters. Now, furries are the ones you'll typically see online in fursuits. I own a few fursuits, I'm making another one. It's me and my partner in a fursuit. And no, we don't think we're animals. We dress up as a character that is anthropomorphized. The most common species you'll see are things like foxes, dragons, cats, wolves, and canines overall. People are just dressing up essentially as their own character. It's kind of akin to cosplaying your own OC. Now, where does this idea that people who identify as furries think that they're animals? Now, it's a bit of a misattribution from the idea of Therianism. So, people who are Therians believe that they either are or once were an animal. Now, this can be an animal that is currently around, an extinct animal, dinosaurs, whatever. Now, this is a more of a spiritual belief where people most often think that in a previous life they were an animal, and as such in this life feel very close to said animal. Now, I'm not too educated on the Therian community and the ongoings in it, so I'm not going to speak too much on it. However, as a baseline, Therians do think to some degree that they either were or are an animal. Now, because they are a smaller community, they don't get spoken about as often. So what's happened is people see a Therian mask and assume that that is pretty much the same as a fursuit. And people obviously don't know the terms around Therian and the Therian community, but they do know things around the furry fandom. So they assume that it's one and the same, and so therefore someone who is a furry is a Therian. Unfortunately, there were a few documentaries, TV shows and things that came out in the early 2000s that kind of just perpetuated this myth, and as such, quite often it's just a form of misunderstanding where people think that a Therian is a furry and vice versa. Now, the other category is otherkin. Otherkin, very similarly to Therians, believe that they are some kind of fantasy animal animal and or creature. Now this can include things like dwarves, elves, and like humanoid fantasy creatures. However, they do believe that they are or were something other than human. And again, this is a even smaller community than Therians. So quite often what happens is people just assume that otherkin and Therians just fall under the furry umbrella. Now, they are 3 separate communities, however there is a lot of overlap. Quite often you will find furries who are Therians or Therians who are also furries. However, they are very different communities. Ultimately, the baseline is furries are cosplaying quite often their own OCs, their own characters, and they're just fans of anthro characters. Whereas otherkin and Therians have a genuine belief that they were or are something other than human. Now, you will see otherkin and Therians in forms of, I suppose, cosplay, for lack of better wording, where they are dressing up as whatever creature they believe themselves to be or that better represents them. However, you will notice that these aren't fursuits and that there are a lot of differences between these 2 forms of expression. And ultimately, it does just kind of fall down to that both are forms of expression. However, one being the furries is just expressing yourself in the form of a character that you made up, whereas otherkin and Therians are exploring your identity, your self-identity, through the form of something other than being human. So the answer is no. Furries don't think that they are an animal. They don't think that they are their persona. Now, a persona may be a self-insert, but that's like me having my Halo self-insert and thinking that is me. I know it's not. It's just me in another form if I was in a fictional universe. It's the same sort of thing if you play a video game or maybe you write stories and you have to self-insert. It's the same sort of thing with furries. A persona will be a form of self-expression through a anthro character. We don't think we're actually that character. We don't actually think we're that animal. If my persona was a wolf, I don't genuinely think that I am a wolf. I know that I'm human. I believe that I'm human. I don't think I was previously a wolf. I just like that character and I feel like that wolf character represents me. So in my case, Mocha is just a representation of me. I don't think that I am Mocha in the way that a Therian would think that they are whatever animal they believe themselves to be, but Mocha does stand as a representation of me within the furry fandom. So no, we don't actually think we're animals, and even if we did, it honestly not really matter. I do think this is quite a non-issue. If I'm not hurting you, why does it matter what I'm doing with my spare time? As you can see behind me, I collect Halo things. It is my special interest, and yes, I do say that as an autistic person. As you can see, I have a whole shelf here, and behind me is more shelving of Halo stuff, and I have about 50 plus books in the other room that are all the Halo books. Now, I get a lot of hate for having a special interest in being an autistic person. So for me, I genuinely think like this is such a non-issue. Like me collecting Halo books does not hurt you in the same way that someone thinking that they're an animal does not hurt you. If it makes someone happy and makes them more fulfilled in their life, I genuinely fail to see how or why people would genuinely care. But that's my take on it. Let me know what you think down below. Now, before anyone starts discourse about clinical lycanthropy, I do want to say that is a whole different thing entirely. That is a medical thing. So please no discourse about that. And no hate either. But let me know what you think down below. Do you think that I've gotten anything wrong? What's your opinions on people who believe that they are animals versus people who believe they are not? But let me know what you think. I honestly just don't care. People are living their life. Live and let be. If it's not hurting anyone or hurting themselves, then I genuinely have no issue with what people believe and what they do with their spare time. It's totally up to them. I am very pro people expressing themselves and making their life more fulfilling for them. But I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.